Hello everyone, I'm back. In keeping with my promise to try to put up a video every couple of days, 2 to 3 days, I'm going to go ahead and put up a video now. One of the reasons is that I am, believe it or not, going to go look at yet another Corvette to buy. I found a C6. Those of you that haven't been keeping up or living under a rock or whatever may not realize how crazy the car market is right now. I mean, everything is overpriced. Right now, Corvettes in general are anywhere from $9,000 to $15,000 over the old book value before all this craziness started. This one is, quote, only $5,000 over that book value. It has been modified. For some people, that's a negative. In my case, it's a positive. It's had a cam and valve springs, anyway, a bunch of minor stuff, so it's minorly modified. For me, the cars are a little underpowered from the factory, especially the C5s. C6 is not so much. The C5s have around 350 horsepower, and the car's just kind of lackluster for me personally. Once you get up to the C6, they've got 400 horsepower, and that pushes it over that edge. So a modified C5 gets you there, or a stock C6 gets you there, and then of course a modified C6 is going to get you even a little farther. So I'm going to go look at that car later today. So that means it's in Dallas or the DFW area. I am north of Austin. It's 2.5 hours there, so I'm going to have to cut this short and go up there and look at the car. From the description and talking to the seller, it sounds like a good deal. So even though it's, like I said, $5,000 overpriced, I don't know when the market's going to correct and everything's going to go back to normal. And I need donor cars in order to do all of this stuff. One of the other things is it's an automatic. Almost all the cars I have are manual transmission. That limits who can buy it. Obviously, there's a lot of people that can't drive a manual transmission, never have learned. So this will allow me to have a car for those people that can't drive a manual transmission or don't want to drive a manual transmission. All right, with that out of the way, let me go ahead and show you what I have done. What I worked on is the hood, flattening the hood, and getting this seam between the hood and the fender correct. If you remember last time, it was wider than it is. That's because I narrowed it on purpose. Let me show you why I did it, how I did it, and what's going on from there. So what I did was I got the gap somewhat consistent. It wasn't 100% consistent, but it was pretty close. But there were some areas that the gap was a little wide. There still is right here. I'll need to narrow that a little bit. It's not a lot too wide, but it is too wide. I had a paint stick around here. Anyway, it slides in there easily. I would want the paint stick to be a tight fit there, so it would be consistent everywhere. So I'm going to fix that. So part of my thing with my YouTube channel is I go through my screw ups as well as the things I did right. So one of the things I did right was when I had that opening that was roughly this wide all the way, some narrower, some wider, I needed to fill in the wide areas, but I didn't want to go over into the fender with, let's say, some body filler, because then I would end up where I started, where the thing was, let's say, bonded shut with body filler. So what I did was I got a piece of metal, thin metal. This is actually a piece that I used to make the running boards in this car. I just cut it. I got this at Home Depot. It's just flashing for roof aluminum. The good thing about this is you can actually cut it with scissors. And that's exactly what I did. I mean, literally a pair of cheap scissors. I don't even know where they are, but anyway, you know, dollar store scissors or whatever. This stuff is that easy to cut. The good thing about it is body filler doesn't stick to it very well. It doesn't like completely not stick to it, but it doesn't stick to it very well. So what I did was I took this, and you can see I put it in between. I had the fender edge where I wanted it, so then I needed to fill in the hood to the fender edge. I wanted the gap narrower than ideal so that then I can sand it and get it wider. So I put this all the way across here, and you can see where the body filler was up against the metal, and you can see where I did the little W shape right there. Yeah, there we go, just like that. Okay, so once I put that there, then I got the body filler on the inside and made it to where there's essentially almost no gap. I mean, the gap is the thickness of this piece of metal in most places. I obviously missed a spot right there. Okay, so once I did that, then I needed to get, I purposely made it too high because if I didn't, I would have to do it twice, 2 or 3 or 4 times, however many. So I purposely made it too high. So then I came back in and sanded it down to the same level as the fender. But there were still some low spots. I knew that. So I needed to fill it up again. And so to make sure that the two surfaces were the same, I thought, well, I'll just put a skim coat of body filler on top of this, and it won't be that bad. Well, that was true if I had caught it before the body filler got too hard. I missed that window. What I did was I got a razor knife here, like this, and I started going down that seam using this fender edge as my guide. The problem was the body filler had hardened enough that it was not easy to make that cut. I did it, but it took about an hour of working back and forth and back and forth. A hacksaw blade might have done a better job, but I don't know where my hacksaw blades are, and I didn't think it would take nearly an hour. And I could have easily wasted an hour trying to find it. Okay, so I sanded this back smooth while it was together, and then I reestablished that edge. I did that last night. I was not quitting. It was pretty late. It was dark, in fact, but it was pretty late by the time I got that done. But I obviously wanted to finish that before the body filler hardened completely. It was still semi-rigid, but it wasn't completely hardened. So I went ahead and established that edge. The reason why that's so important is because obviously I want the hood to be able to open and close, and with that basically glued shut, that wouldn't happen. All right, the next thing I did was, there we go. All right, I might have to set down the phone because this thing doesn't spring up like it's supposed to. I'm using the remote with one hand and holding the point up. There we go. I'm going to put some foam or something in between here so that it pops up. All right. Okay, so previously what I'd done was I'd established this edge right here along with that inset that I talked about previously. That's the right way to do it, but it was a lot of work on the hood. I didn't do it the right way. What I did was I just went ahead and got some body filler. Now this isn't normal body filler. This is body filler with fiberglass in it. You can see by looking at this that it has fiberglass in it. This stuff is pretty amazing. It's worth its weight in gold. I'm cheap. I try to buy $25, $30 body filler. This stuff is like, I don't know, $40, $50 a gallon. It's worth the difference. It's absolutely amazing. It has it has thinner consistency than even this plain old body filler without the fiberglass. If you've used the Bondo stuff, kitty hair, whatever, that stuff sucks. I mean, it's really hard to work with. It's really stiff. It's hard to get smooth. This stuff, literally, I mean, it spreads like butter. I would open it, but I don't want to mess with it right now. Anyway, trust me, it spreads like butter. It spreads better than just plain body filler. So it's worth the difference if you need the extra fiberglass in there. What's also great about it is, of course, if you've ever dealt with normal body filler on edges like this, it's really easy to chip the edge. If you hit it, it'll literally chip. This doesn't do that. In fact, it's somewhat flexible, but then it gets hard enough to be a nice solid edge. So what I did was I just skimmed across here all the way down the edge. There was a gap right here. What happened was, as I was sanding, this top would flex, and so it was hard to get it to sand to the same level as the fender with this flexing up and down. The harder I would press, it would just flex this more, and it would start sanding on the fender instead of this. So by putting this spacer in here of body filler, now this is a very solid edge. I mean, you know, you can't even push down on it. And so I went all the way to the halfway point, because again, I'm going to do the passenger side, get it the way I want it, make a template off of this shape right here, put that template over here, probably cut some foam to that shape or something to space it out. I could just fill it with body filler and use the template itself with the body filler. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do that. Either approach will work, at least in my mind at this point. So I could have done like I did with the other and inset this, you know, 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, or whatever, because all that really matters is this top outside edge right here. This, as soon as it goes past the thickness of this hood material, it could go in as far as we want. And obviously this bottom part right here could be completely cut away because it does nothing. But I don't want to do that, because if you look, there's the liner of the hood. It's actually the support. This hood would be really floppy if it was all by itself, but this is a liner slash support. So you can see that here's the hood. If you look from the bottom where I accidentally cut this open, didn't accidentally, but didn't need to cut it. I found I didn't need to cut it after the fact. So there's the actual hood, and then underneath it is this bracing that basically gives the hood structure or strength, adds to its strength. Okay, but if you look, there's not a lot of difference. What is that? Less than 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch between the structure underneath and the hood. So that would mean that ideally this would be the same width as the piece underneath, and there's only that 1/8 of an inch spacing there. Okay, why that's critical is because this gap between here relies on sanding either the hood or the fender. Ideally, I don't want it to be sanding on the fender. Ideally, what would happen is the fender is a specified shape or dimension. You put the hood on and purposely make the hood slightly oversized, and then you sand it down to get the gap that you want. Well, obviously you wouldn't want to sand, what is that, an inch, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches of material. So by making it just a lip that sticks out, you wouldn't have to do that. In this case, I'm going to make a mold off of this. So all you do is you don't make this that thick. And I would put that step in here when I actually make the part. So at some point this will be cut, inset, enough to move that in, like I said, 1/8 of an inch or 3/16, whatever that is. So that then the hood would be, and I would make the hood slightly oversized, so that then when we put it on, first off, the placement isn't absolutely critical. It'll be critical, but not absolutely critical. So ideally what would happen is you put the hood on with the fender and there's a 0 gap or close to 0 gap. Then, you sand or reshape that edge to get the desired gap. Okay, so that's what I did on this. All right, so I guess you could call that a screw up by not doing that inset, but it was intentional because I didn't want to mess with all that extra work. Okay, so I think that was it on that. The next thing is a screw up. I hate doing body work. The only reason I do it is because it is so freaking expensive to pay somebody to do it. It would cost about $100,000 if I had just taken this to a body shop and said, hey, I've got this idea for this car. Let's say I had great sketches and all of that stuff to it, handed it to them. Either using the 3D model approach, carving foam, making patterns, plugs, making molds from those plugs, or directly making the molds by carving, or just taking it to a body shop and doing it the same way I'm doing it, more manually. Either way, the end cost would end up being about $100,000 on top of the cost of this car. That's prohibitive. I just don't want to spend that much money on it, and don't really have that much money to spend on it. So that's why I'm doing this all myself. That being said, I'm not real good at getting that first layer of body filler down absolutely smooth. Somebody that does this for a living, they can put their body filler down and lay it, and it's almost perfect in the first pass. And then they'll do a skim coat and they're done. For me, it takes 4 or 5 coats first, and that's before I ever even get to a skim coat. What happens, one of the things, is that I end up with lines. I've sanded them out, otherwise I would show you, where I use the spreaders, let's say 4 or 6 inches wide, and so I'll take the spreader across there, and you can see a line where each spreader stroke is, and so that's a slightly raised spot, and then I have to end up sanding that down. It's tedious, it's a lot of work. I did, with this last layer that I put down, I mixed less hardener in there, so it took longer for the body filler to harden. There's one of my neighbors flying their plane. The advantage of that was I was able to take that same 6-inch spreader, go up and down, go sideways, go diagonally. I had enough time to rework it that it was much, much smoother, and I got rid of those ridges that were in there. But the screw up part is, I thought about it and I went, wait a minute, this hood came out of a mold. Unless my mold just absolutely sucks, which it doesn't, that means that this hood was in good shape straight out of the mold. What I did was, I didn't like these floor mat, we call them floor mat, vents. They're fake vents in the first place, but they literally look like somebody took a floor mat, one of the old rubber floor mats that used to come in cars, and cut it into a rectangular shape and stuck it in here and made a vent or a depression out of it. I didn't like that. In hindsight, an easier way to do is say, you know what, so what, you don't like the vent, leave it on there, change the opening of the hood, because it would have intersected the opening of the hood with the C8 opening, so that would have been kind of awkward having the hood open in the middle of this vent. So I would have had to change the opening. Might have been easier, might not have been, but it doesn't matter because I chose to get rid of those vents. So I filled this in with fiberglass. I cut out the part that made it lower, put pieces of wood, if you go back and look at that video, put pieces of wood across here to hold it, and then I fiberglassed this in like I did over here. Then I filled the whole area with body filler. That was my mistake. If you look at the right side there, as you're looking at it, that thing's smooth. It didn't need body filler over all of this area up here. I mean, there's some minor defects. Those would have been taken care of if I had used gel coat. And in hindsight, I also should have made this thicker. It's a little too flexible. I don't know why I did that. I guess I was just trying to get it done. Anyway, in hindsight, if I were to do that again, those are 2 things I would do. One, I would use gel coat, even though I knew I was going to cut and modify it. And again, that would give me that same sanding thing where, well, if the gel coat's 25 thousandths, then if I see fiberglass, I know I've sanded down 25 thousandths. So I would have that as a reference point. There's also gel coat that's gray and sandable. A friend of mine told me about it. I haven't found it yet, but I do need to get some for in the future. All that said, I had a bunch of ridges up here. and I was adding more and more body filler, trying to get rid of those ridges. And literally just this morning, it dawned on me, wait a minute, if that's a flat, smooth surface, why am I adding a whole bunch of body filler to get this back to be a flat, smooth surface? All I really should have done was put body filler any place where it needed to be, where after I fiberglassed in that depression and got it relatively level, there would only be some low spots that needed body filler. Not 100% true. If you look at this vent, fake vent, extends a little bit, it drops off, and then it's actually not even level until right there. Same thing on this outside, it hits level about right there. So there actually does need to be a skim coat here to build this up to the level there. Very little, but it needs to be there. The point of that is, after I realized I had put on too much body filler, I decided take it off. What I did was I got some 36 grit sandpaper and one of these flat sanding boards. What is it, like 16, 18 inches, something like that. And I just started sanding. I've been sanding on this for about 2 hours this morning. And what I did is, in my mind, I said, okay, I only need a skim coat of body filler on here because underneath this should be a flat surface. So if you look at this, it should be the right level all the way across here. Then there might be some defects, or will be some defects, where I bonded this in. This might be low, hopefully it's not high, so it might be low. So again, it might need a skim coat there. And again, the same thing right here. So then I said, all right, that makes sense. Why don't I sand down until I see fiberglass on those areas that are at the right level? So that's what I did. I came through here and said, well, there should be no, and I'm not quite done, there should be no body filler here for this. What is that, 3 inches, 2.5 inches? So there should be a 2.5 inch strip like there is right here where there is no body filler, because that's solid fiberglass. There's no reason to have any body filler there. So I'm not quite done. I honestly am tired of sanding. I have not gotten to that point up at that top part yet. I'm getting close, so I still need to sand some more there. This whole area across the back here should once again be all the way down to fiberglass. You can see I've gotten to it here. I've been working on it in areas, so I got this area right here to where it's down mostly to fiberglass. Once I get to here, that rule doesn't apply. It depends on how well or how flat I got that vent when I raised it back up. So here you can see it's a little bit high. So we're finding the high spots right here as I sand. Let's see, so, and then I don't know why this is this way. I know why that's that way. That's where I screwed up and cut off too much. So theoretically, if you look straight across here, this part should be the right level, and this over here is actually anybody's game because I made this edge where it is. But there should be that band across here, let's call it the width of my 4 fingers, all the way across here. You should see fiberglass. So I've got some more sanding to do. And then where it drops down, let's say the vent edge, I don't know where the vent edge is because it's covered up with body filler, but let's say the vent edge was right here. It should be fiberglass up to that vent edge, and then it should be body filler because that's where it fills up. And eventually that should taper down to this area right here where there is no body filler and it's just fiberglass. Same thing on this inside edge. It should be right there. There should be a definite line all the way there, sanded through down to fiberglass, and then the body filler starts right there. So all that to say that I screwed up. I put on too much body filler. Luckily I found the mistake. and I am correcting it. It's just cost me several hours worth of work. I do have an air-powered sander, but I hadn't used it in the past because I didn't have my air compressor hooked up. A Kobo, my body guy, of course, uses air tools, so I had to wire up my air compressor. It's 220, so I had to go in the garage and wire up 220 for that. Now that I have that, I've got a linear sander, air linear sander. I bought it on clearance. It was a display model. It didn't have a box. It was kind of screwed up. I bought it on the chance that it needed just a little TLC and would work. So now I need to apply the TLC and see if I can get it to work. If you haven't seen one, it looks pretty much like this, except for it's made out of metal. And when you hit the button, the bottom vibrates back and forth. So literally I can just sit here and run it across here, and it will do a lot of the heavy sanding for me instead of me having to do that. Two things: one, it's less effort, and two, it's faster. So I would imagine it wouldn't take, but I don't know, I'd be shocked if it took 15 minutes to sand that area right there that still needs sanding. It's going to take me at least 30 minutes to do it by hand. The reason I stopped sanding was I have this sticky-sided sandpaper I bought, and I got lazy and didn't clean this off, and it had the dust from prior work, and the dust transferred onto there. So now the sandpaper doesn't stick to this anymore. I do have other pieces of sanders that have the little clips. So possibly there's enough to do it that way. I don't know, doesn't matter. Anyway, learned my lesson. I have rubbing alcohol would have worked great to clean this out with a brush. I didn't know where either one was. And again, in my haste, I decided I don't need it, it'll stick. And it did for a little while. It got it to this point, but now it doesn't stick anymore. And when I sand, I can get about 4 sanding strokes in, and then the sandpaper sticks to the surface instead of the sander. All right, that's where I'm at. I'm going to sand a little more, and then I've got to pack up and head to Dallas and go look at that car. One other thing that I do have is that there was a spot here you can see where I previously, changed this from the square opening of the out of the mold. See how the edge there is square? I filled that in and instead did the edge where the C8 hood is. I could have done it the other way and used this, but then I would have to deal with what's underneath here. I would have lost my mounting points here, and again, my goal was to keep the factory mounting points as much as possible. So that made this the decision to go ahead and follow the C8 hood opening. Even though it doesn't match the theme of this car, it is just a body seam. But what happened was this was a little bit high. So I tried to put a screw in here, a normal screw in here, and none of the screws I had were long enough. I could go to Home Depot, but I know me, if I go to Home Depot, it's a minimum of 30 minutes to an hour by the time I go there, even just to get one screw and come back. And that's time I could be working, especially in the morning when it's cooler. So what I did was I tried to put a screw in there and it wouldn't reach down to the surface underneath. It wasn't long enough. So what I did instead was got one of these screws, which is 3 inches long, which obviously is too long. If I screwed this all the way in, no telling what I would hit underneath. So what I did was I used the smaller screw, made this top hole, then took my screwdriver, this is a drywall screw or cabinet screw, put it in until it drilled its own hole and attached to what was underneath. Now the way this is going to work is if I just keep putting this screw in, if I had just kept putting the screw in, the two surfaces would stay the same distance apart because of the thread pitch. If it turns here and moves, an 1/8 of an inch, then the screw's going to go down 1/8 of an inch, and this would stay in its relative position and the screw would move up and down. So what I did was after I put the screw in, I pulled the screw out. I then pushed this down. This stuck out higher previously. I pushed this down to the level where I wanted it Ideally, you could push it a little bit low and say, okay, it's low, I'm going to fill it. Instead, I decided to risk it and try to put it exactly even. So I put it even. Then when I put the screw in, as the screw goes in, it maintains that same distance between the upper surface and the lower surface. So if I decided I wanted this to be lower, I would literally pull this screw out, push down on this upper surface and put the screw back in, and the screw would maintain that distance no matter whether I screw it up or down. This would stay the same distance. By the same token, if I wanted it higher, I would pull the screw out, raise this up to where I wanted it, put the screw back in, and again, that screw would act as a spacer and maintain this difference, this distance. The difference, or when that stops, is when I get all the way to the head of the screw. If this was a shorter screw and didn't have this shank right here, then as I tighten the screw down, it would draw this top surface down further and further. The problem with that is then when I use fiberglass or body filler or whatever, it's going to try to fill in that slot right there. Then, especially if you use fiberglass or body filler, either one, it's hard to get that screw out because a screwdriver doesn't work anymore. What I do in that case is I get plumber's putty and I put it into the crosshatch there where the Phillips screw head is. Then after the body filler or fiberglass has cured, I come in, actually before it's completely cured, I come in with a razor knife, trim it around this circle, dig out the plumber's putty, and then the screwdriver just takes it right out. So that's one of the tricks I've learned from doing this for a couple of years now. One other thing, I got up early yesterday morning before sunrise to come work on this, and as I did, I saw lightning, and so I said, oh, I better go out and put stuff up in case it rains. So I came out and the window on the car was down because it loses its up and down from the battery running down. So I had to go get the battery charger, charge this up enough, or actually put it on the jump mode, and get the window to close. Then I went back inside to go get some stuff. In that time, a storm hit. It came out of nowhere. It wasn't in the weather prediction, and it was bad. It rained 6 inches in an hour. The other thing that happened is it destroyed yet another one of my shade covers. You can see that it bent in several places, broke. It won't even fold up right now. I literally missed it by 15 minutes, but obviously closing the window and keeping the car dry inside was more important than saving a canvas or whatever, shade cover. Now I have to go buy another one. Luckily Walmart had them on sale for 45 bucks. They weren't as nice as this one, but it was only $45, half the cost of this one. And they were actually half price there. They were on sale. So I'm going to run to Walmart and see if they have another one. Hopefully my luck is good. They have them still there and still on sale. So I'll grab one of those and have yet another one. I've got 2 destroyed ones. And then actually some big ones that actually got damaged. I do have a metal aluminum cover that I am eventually going to put over the driveway, but every day it's a choice. Do I assemble that? It takes 3 days to assemble. 2 people in 3 days to assemble it, or at least it did the last one. Might be able to get it down to 2 days, but still. So do I want to spend 2 days putting up an aluminum cover and lose 2 more days of working on the car? And right now, that doesn't seem like a good choice. Now, next week, when the temperature is 100 degrees every day for the high, I may change my mind. I probably will change my mind and decide, you know what, it's worth taking 2 days to put that shade cover up. But until then, I'm just going to go get another portable one and work that way. All right, I think that's got everything covered. So, like, subscribe, hit the alert. If you want to, hit that thanks button, donate some money. Some of the my friends have already donated some money, so thanks to you that have done that. I really appreciate it. And if you don't know what I'm doing, you don't know jack. See you next time. Bye.